Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we countdown of the top 10 space exploration accomplishments. Join us as we embark on a journey through the awe-inspiring achievements that have pushed the boundaries of human exploration and expanded our understanding of the cosmos. Number 10. Explorer 1, the first U.S. satellite. Immediately after the news of Sputnik's success, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory (JPL), soon to be the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, began designing the satellite that would follow Sputnik into space. It took less than 3 months for the JPL to finish Explorer 1. The satellite rode into space onboard a rocket, and it carried equipment designed to help scientists study the cosmic rays in Earth's orbit. Explorer 1 measured 80 inches, 203 centimeters, long and 6.25 inches, 15.9 centimeters, in diameter, and weighed 30 pounds, 14 kilograms. The satellite circled the planet 12.5 times a day, its altitude fluctuating from 1,563 miles, 2,515 kilometers, to 220 miles, 354 kilometers, above Earth as it measured the cosmic radiation in its environment. Our understanding of Earth's atmosphere was forever changed by this little object. Once Explorer 1 made it into space, it began collecting information on the cosmic rays there. Some of the readings transmitted from Explorer 1 showed cosmic ray activity that was significantly lower than scientists expected. Physicist James Van Allen hypothesized that the cause of the anomaly was essentially an interference with the satellite's cosmic ray detector. Number 9. Hubble Space Telescope, the universe unveiled. Before 1990, our view of space mostly came from ground-based light telescopes. The images were interesting, but not very clear, and the optics couldn't see far enough to give us the views astronomers craved. Earth's atmosphere, with all its clouds, water and gas vapors, tends to distort extraterrestrial light, so it's not terribly conducive to capturing clear images. The solution? Put telescopes on the other side of Earth's atmosphere, where the light would travel to distant objects and bounce back unhindered. That's where the Hubble Space Telescope (HST) comes in. It wasn't the first space telescope, but the HST has proved to be one of the most scientifically important objects ever built. Named after astronomer Edwin Hubble, this telescope's made more than 1.5 million astronomical observations and looked at over 40,000 different space objects. Today it's still providing mankind with clear, mesmerizing images of our universe. What's more, the HST is always facilitating new discoveries. Upwards of 15,000 scientific papers have drawn on data the telescope provided. Number 8. Chandra X-ray Observatory, the high-energy universe. In 1999, NASA launched what was for many years the most sensitive X-ray telescope ever built. This contraption could see things no one had ever seen before, such as the split second when space particles disappear into a black hole. X-ray telescopes are different than the more commonplace optical telescopes we're all familiar with. Instead of relying on visible light to form an image, the Chandra X-ray Observatory uses higher energy particles, namely X-rays. Due to our planet's shield-like atmosphere, X-rays that originate from other parts of the universe cannot be observed down here on Earth. Instead, scientists have to document these via specialized telescopes that have been sent into space. Orbiting the Earth at 200 times the altitude of Hubble, Chandra is 25 times more sensitive than any previous X-ray telescope. Number 7. The Juno spacecraft, a trip to Jupiter. In 1972, NASA's Pioneer 10 probe became the first man-made object to pass through the asteroid belt. Upon making it across, the spacecraft again broke new ground when it took the unprecedented step of observing a so-called outer planet, in this case, Jupiter. Now another probe is checking out the gas giant. Launched from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on August 5, 2011, Juno's mission is to study various aspects of Jupiter, including the planet's gravitational fields and tempestuous atmosphere. The probe finally reached the colossal planet on July 4, 2016. En route, Juno set a new spacefaring record. A trio of 30-foot, 9-meter solar arrays powered this magnificent craft. On Jan 13, 2016, Juno found itself 493 million miles, 793 million kilometers, away from the Sun. No other solar-powered spacecraft has ever traveled such a great distance. The probe is currently orbiting the gas giant in an elliptical fashion, taking a route that brings it within about 2,600 miles, 4,200 kilometers, of the tops of Jupiter's clouds. Juno has made some mind-boggling discoveries so far. Number 6. Apollo 13, brilliance at mission control. Apollo 13 was headed for the moon. On April 11, 1970, the spacecraft lifted off. 55 hours and 55 minutes later, an explosion shut down almost every system necessary to sustain life on board. The string of events leading to the explosion began in 1965, with an oversight involving the oxygen tank thermostats. Tank number 2, which had been damaged before the launch, violently ruptured when a fan was turned on. That set the stage for one of the most amazing collaborative rescues in history. So many things went wrong on Apollo 13, it's an engineering miracle that the crew, astronauts James Lovell, John Swigert and Fred Hayes, made it home at all, let alone alive and well. Minutes after the crew completed a television broadcast from space, telling America everything was going well, an explosion shook the spacecraft. One disaster led to another. When Tank No. 2 blew up, the force caused another oxygen tank to malfunction. Immediately after, 2 of the craft's 3 fuel cells shut down. Apollo 13 was 200,000 miles, 321,868 kilometers, away from home, venting oxygen into space, and its normal supply of electric power, water, oxygen, heat and light had been cut off. Number 5. The Space Shuttle, a reusable spacecraft. In 1972, the Apollo program was winding down, and NASA was doing some technological soul-searching. The Apollo rockets were single-use spacecraft. The cost per mission was, well, astronomical. A reusable spacecraft would not only save money, but it would also be an amazing technological advance. After President Richard Nixon announced the plan to build a reusable spacecraft that would run multiple, perhaps indefinite numbers of missions, NASA developed the basic design: 2 solid rocket boosters attached to an orbiter module and an external fuel tank. There were considerable hurdles facing the project. Since the equipment that protected previous spacecraft from Earth's searing atmosphere essentially disintegrated during re-entry, NASA needed an entirely new heat shield concept. It came up with a method of coating the craft with ceramic tiles that would absorb the heat without degrading. The other major redesign had to do with the landing itself. Number 4. The Apollo 8 mission, a lunar Christmas Eve. Before NASA could put a man on the moon, the agency needed to know that it had the technology to bring a crew out there in the first place. Any such trek would present a gigantic challenge. By 1968, a handful of people had gone up into space, but none of those early pioneers left low Earth orbit in the process. Yet adversity can be a great motivator. For reasons we'll discuss soon, NASA was facing political pressure to execute an American moon landing before the decade ended. Time was running out, so on August 19, 1968, the administration announced that a manned, fly-by trip around the moon would be attempted that December. Astronauts Frank Borman, James A. Lovell, and William Anders, who'd been preparing themselves for a very different kind of mission, were assigned to this endeavor. After an intense training period, the 3 men boarded a 363-foot, 110.6-meter Saturn V rocket and were launched into space on deck. 21. 1968. The Apollo 8 mission had formally begun. Number 3. The Mars Science Laboratory, a rockhound on the red planet. On a far-off world, one that's an average distance of 140 million miles, 225 million kilometers, away from our own, there's an SUV-sized, nuclear-powered vehicle with its own Twitter account. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Curiosity rover. In 1997, NASA's Mars Pathfinder became the first spacecraft to land on another planet, you can guess which one, without first orbiting it. One of the Pathfinder's most ambitious successors is the Mars Science Laboratory, a $2.5 billion probe whose main attraction is a 6-wheeled rover named Curiosity. Earlier rovers were powered by solar panels, which left them at the mercy of Martian dust storms and low light periods. Curiosity sidesteps those problems by using plutonium to generate electricity. For a Martian rover, Curiosity is huge. Weighing 1,982 pounds, 899 kilograms, it's 10 feet, 3.04 meters, long by 9 feet, 2.74 meters, wide and 7 feet, 2.13 meters tall. That makes the vehicle 4 times heavier, and twice as long, as two of the rovers that preceded it to Mars, namely the Spirit and the Opportunity. Oh yeah, and Curiosity totally dwarfs the Pathfinder rover, which had the rough dimensions of a microwave oven. Number 2. Freedom 7, the first American in space. The first American astronaut to orbit the Earth was Alan Shepard, and he left Earth on May 5, 1961. He wasn't the first human in space. A Soviet astronaut named Yuri Gagarin has that distinction. But Shepard was NASA's entry into the annals of human space flight. It was a nervous day for NASA. The countdown, divided into 2 parts so Shepard and the launch crew could obtain some rest before the moment of truth came, took more than 24 hours. NASA halted it several times for minor equipment checks, and finally it was 15 minutes to liftoff. Shepard was on board, the pilots of the launch vehicle were ready, and all systems were go. Then the clouds moved in. The weather wasn't a problem for the launch. But it was a problem for the photographer covering the biggest NASA event to date. So NASA postponed the launch until the clouds cleared. As they waited, one of the orbiter's power inverters showed signs of trouble, and engineers fixed the problem in 86 minutes. Then the countdown began again. Once more, there was an interruption at T15, this time because NASA opted to double-check a piece of navigation equipment. Number 1. Apollo 11, a walk on the moon. Just 20 days after Alan Shepard orbited the Earth, President John F. Kennedy announced the mission that would be NASA's greatest achievement. America was going to the moon. In response, NASA initiated the Apollo space program. It took 8 years to realize Kennedy's stated goal. Apollo 1 in 1967 was a disaster. All 3 astronauts on board died in a fire on the launch pad. Over the next 2 years, NASA ran 9 more missions, testing various aspects of the operation. The work moved quickly. When equipment delays came up, NASA just switched to other equipment. But Apollo 11 was the first mission to actually land men on the moon. When astronaut Neil Armstrong set foot on its surface on July 20, 1969, and spoke the words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," an estimated 530 million people from all across the world were eagerly watching. Thank you for joining us on this incredible voyage. Until next time, keep looking up at the stars and dreaming of new frontiers.